Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Joni Parsons. Welcome to Revel 11. I'm so happy you're here and happy Wednesday. I am so thrilled to be welcoming a friend, Willi Galloway. And, gardening has drawn a lot of interest today. It's perfect timing since it's definitely spring. But gardening is more than a hobby, it's a way of life, a daily practice of patience, expectations, and nourishment. As a gardener, I know the magic that comes from planting a seed, tending a garden, and eventually gathering all of that bounty for a delicious meal that really signifies every season. And that's the magic of it. That's why I'm thrilled that Willi Galloway is here talking about her new book, Grow, Cook, and Eat. Can you all see it? A Food Lover's Guide to Vegetable Gardening. This book invites us to experience the full cycle of growing and enjoying food year round. It's so great. Willie and I met many years ago when she was editor of Organic Gardening magazine. I was like, oh, Willie, she's like Organic Gardening. It's a magazine that I grew up with. She's an award-winning radio commentator and writer, and she teaches gardening classes here in the Pacific Northwest and also cooking classes as well. Welcome, Willie. I'm so happy you're here
Thank
finally.
you. I'm really excited
This
to be
is
here.
this is the second time Willie's been on. This is the second edition of this book. She talked about it's been many years ago now, but anyway, but let's get started. Like, why this book right now, Willie?
Well, I think that gardening, growing food is always important. And I think that as gardeners, what we can get out of it is that when you grow your own food, you have an opportunity to grow things that you don't get to see at the grocery store or even the farmer's market. It just really opens up the range of what you can grow. And I think, there's a lot of things happening globally that can feel stressful. And having a garden is really an opportunity to go out and literally be grounded, like stick your hands in the soil. And I think there's a lot to that. It's super important to find ways to just be mindful and centered. And for me, gardening is a really important way to do that.
And my partner and I have been talking that it feels more important than ever to grow our own food. I have my starts right back here. Wanted to show everybody I have fava beans. First time to grow these. A little pepper, a spaghetti squash, and some purple basil. So that's just the beginning of our garden. But we're diving in deep this year on gardening. So tell me and us about why this book is different than other gardening books that you might see out there.
Yeah, so I got the germ of an idea for this book when I was an editor at Organic Gardening magazine, and I kind of had the vegetable beat, if you will. So I got to like call the guy, developing new carrot varieties and talk to him about it. It was awesome. It was my first job out of college and like literally like dream job. It was
Amazing.
so fun. But I would do a lot of research. I worked at Rodale. They had a huge library that full of gardening books and agricultural texts and all sorts of stuff. And so many of the books were not that pretty or inspiring. Like they were pretty ugly, not to be mean, but like a lot of them were just like not that. They came out of this sort of like 70s back to the land. And there was a lot of focus on yield, which is important. Obviously, if you're growing food, you don't want to get just like one tomato, which happened to me last year with a specific heirloom that just doesn't do well in my climate. But what I was thinking is, as a gardener, most people aren't going to be growing all their own food. They're going to be growing food they love, food they enjoy to cook with, food they want to share with their friends. And really, they're growing it because they want it to taste good and it's fun to grow it. And so I wanted to write a book that was focused on flavor and was also really straightforward, that just made it easy. Like you could read a chapter on peas or carrots and feel like, okay, I can do this. And that there would be information for new gardeners, but also hopefully some like pretty cool tips that you maybe have been growing for a while and you're like, oh, I didn't know I could eat fava bean greens, which you can, by the way.
Well, you know what's so interesting, and this why I like this book so much. I've been through every single page, and so say with snow peas, it's the time right now. She has a section on planting, growing, harvesting, storing, cooking ideas, delicious varieties, pre-sprouting seeds, and then you have these beautiful recipes in here as well. So it's kind of, the way I'm looking at your book, Willi, is it's my vegetable gardening Bible for from this point forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was really hoping for. And what I think people will find that's a little different in each guide is I talk through all the different stages of harvest and also all the different edible parts of a plant. So, at the grocery store, you're just going to see like one stage of harvest, right? The mature stage usually, or the baby stage. That's kind of the two. But sometimes there's a range of stages that you can harvest things at. And then there's also a lot of edible parts of the plant that don't travel well. So you're never going to see them at the store. And peas are a great example. I like to plant peas really close together because they do sort of like to climb up on each other, but they also, you can pinch some back. You can pinch out the sprouts and they'll branch more. So you can eat the greens in a salad. That the flowers are edible, and of course the pods and the seeds are edible too. And so I just really wanted people, if they were taking the time to plant food, really be able to enjoy the whole plant. Because I think that's a lot of the fun of it, is getting to try stuff that you don't see other places.
Yeah, there were some tips in here about things that you could eat that I had no idea about, but let's save some of those ideas for
Okay.
a little bit later. But how has gardening deepened your connections to the season and the natural world? You personally, like, what does it mean to
Yeah.
you?
Well, I mean, I think in terms of the natural world, what I've discovered about gardening, right before we hopped on this call, I ran out to my garden. And when I was coming back in, there was this amazing spider on the side of my house, right above one of my garden beds. And I always think like life is such a miracle that there's like this spider that had iridescent blue eyes and he was black and white and he was skittering around. And when you're out in your garden and you get to notice the little changes, I just think it makes you appreciate how amazing our world is. I mean, just like all the different types of plants, all of the creatures, how they all work together. If you are out there gardening, it's an opportunity to have a chance to really just see that up front in your own little personal space. So I love that. And then I also love that it brings you closer to the seasons. You're noticing what's happening outside your window. And I think that, in life, there's seasons too. And recognizing that sometimes there's a season in life, like I am in a season of life right now that's like really busy. I have an 11-year-old and a business and I'm writing books and then there's also seasons that are quieter and more restful and in between seasons. And I think recognizing that that's a natural order, and for myself, not trying to have my life be spring all the time, right?
I think that is such a beautiful analogy and one that we should all keep in mind. That's such an invitation for us when life gets hard. It's like, okay, this is just a season, it's going to pass, and
Yeah.
then it will evolve again. It's beautiful. So let's dive into gardening. I love how you have started with gardening tips here. Why don't you tell us a couple of tips that you would like people to like your top 3 tips from your
Okay,
book?
my top 3 tips. Well, I would say my people are always like, "Oh, I'm new to gardening. What should I grow?" And I think the number one thing people should have in their garden is herbs. Because we've all been there where we're making some dressing recipe that we saw on Instagram or something, and it calls for, like 2 tablespoons of basil or 2 teaspoons of thyme. And so you go to the grocery store and you buy a clamshell of herbs. And so now you have a piece of plastic that's not recyclable in a lot of places, and you have way more herbs than the recipe called for. And it's like, what do you do with it? Well, you could spend the same amount of money buying the plant and putting it in the garden if you have a garden, growing it in your windowsill if you're in an apartment, putting it in a pot and putting it in the sunniest part of your yard if you have a more shady location. Like herbs are just You can use them in everything. I like to joke that like having basil makes a frozen pizza taste better. You know, like they
Yes.
just like make literally everything taste better, and they're pretty easy to grow. And if it dies, it's not like, you know, a referendum on how good of a gardener you are. You could just buy another one. And so I think that's one thing that I think people should just grow more herbs, because you'll use them and you'll be so happy.
So
Um,
Willie, we're diving into but in addition to basil, what are your other top 5 herbs?
oh, I love chives. I let's see, I basil is obviously up there. Chives. I love thyme. I have like 4 different kinds of it out in my garden right now. I actually really love chervil. So chervil
Oh,
is one of those herbs that most people have never heard of. It's very popular in France. It has like a very light anise flavor. It's really good on potatoes with fish, just in salad to add like a little bit of extra flavor. Has edible flowers that are really cute. They're like white. And it's great because if you let it go to seed, it self sows. And so you plant it now, it like disappears in the summer. You're like, oh, chervil gone. And then in like September, it resprouts. And it's not an herb where you're like, oh my God, like lemon balm or something where it takes over your garden. It just sort of comes back up. And then I really like rosemary. On Sundays I poach chicken, so I have chicken in my fridge for like emergency meals. And I'd love to just go out in my garden and like put some sage in there. I love sage too. Rosemary, you know, thyme, whatever. Just put it in the water that I'm poaching my chicken with, and it makes it have so much flavor.
so how has your approach to gardening changed over the years?
Um, I would say that I'm a lot more chill about it now. Like I've had some years where I've had a huge garden, or I've had 2 gardens, one at home and one at a pea patch or a, you know, a community garden space. And now I'm realizing that it's okay if I have a small garden one year and then I have a big garden another year. And you know, and that I can just grow whatever I want. And it's not some sort of competition out there where everyone's like, you know, like seeing if my garden's better than it was before, you know. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is I've started keeping a garden journal. Like I used to have this lockbox where I could
Idea.
remember like the name of every lettuce I've ever grown. And now I'm like, oh, I liked that lettuce I grew last year, the green one. You know, I can't,
Such a great idea.
yeah, I just like can't keep it all in my head anymore. And so I've started keeping a journal where I keep track. I actually just glue the seed packets
That's a great idea.
onto a piece of paper, and then I keep track of, you know, when I planted it, when it sprouted, if I liked it, because sometimes I grow something and I'm like, meh, you know, it was okay.
Yeah.
And if I want to grow it again, and that was kind of fun. Last year was the first year I did that, and I went back through this year and I was like, oh yeah, I liked that one, and that was, you know, and so
Oh,
it was fun.
I love that idea so much. I'm definitely going to steal that. And Sandy said it to us, it's like excellent tip. It is. And I love, putting in the seed packet or the little tag from, from your little starters as well.
Oh, and I have one more tip. My husband got me a sticker printer. So it's this like you can you can take a picture on your phone and then you can like airdrop it to the printer and it prints out a little sticker and so if I because some of the seed packets don't have a photo on them or a drawing, so then I can remember I'm like, oh yeah, that pepper, the one that looked sort of like a heart shape. And so that's been kind of fun too to put that in my journal. I have the seed packet and the sticker.
So many great tips. So we all make a lot of mistakes as gardeners. What are some top tips you have for us not to make as many mistakes as we do?
Yeah. Well, so a lot of times you'll go to the garden center and you'll see stuff that's been grown as starts that really you should just plant from seed. Like so cilantro, carrots, like runner
Mhm.
beans, all that stuff does great from seed, germinates really reliably. It's, you know, you're gonna get for paying $5 for a little pot of them, or you know, $5 for a seed pack, you're gonna get a lot more. So just, and there's a list of like things to grow from seed, things to grow from
Yeah, it's
transplant.
right here. It's fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It
that's, I
says,
think,
crops to, go ahead.
oh,
Sorry.
go ahead. Yeah.
I just was going to say, it says crops to plant as seedlings, crops to grow from either seeds or starts, and then self-sowing, succession planting. So, again, it's right here. It's all right here.
Yes. So that's one mistake. Another thing is when you do buy a pack of seedlings, a lot of times there's a bunch of plants in one pot. And so you're going to want to tease them apart and plant them out, because otherwise you'll just have a tangled clump where all the roots are together. If you bought carrots or something, it's not just one carrot in there. And so you have to sort of pull them apart. So keeping that in mind. And then I think that other mistake people do is sometimes they get excited in spring. I've done this myself, plant a ton of stuff, and then summer's crazy, you're traveling and whatever, and you don't take as good care of your garden, and you feel bad about it. And I would just like to say, don't feel bad about it. Like it's a garden. Like it's probably doing fine without you. And even if it's not completely weeded and looks like Martha Stewart's kitchen garden, like it's okay. Like just, yeah. So that's the other mistake is don't be hard on yourself if you plant something and it is not working out the way you thought. Like that's fine. There's always next year.
Well, and so let's talk about, some people have big gardens, others have smaller gardens, some people have decks and grow in containers. What would be some of your tips for a smaller garden, and what did you grow in that garden?
Yeah, so I'll just tell you about my garden real quick. So I live in Portland, Oregon. And when we bought our house, it was completely paved over with asphalt. Like the people who bought it before were like, this is low maintenance, putting asphalt everywhere or something. So we depaved, we took out all that asphalt because it was making water run into our basement. And then I didn't really want to plant in the soil because we did that, 10 years ago almost, and I still find chunks of asphalt when I dig down. So I grow in troughs. So I have 6 troughs and a few other containers. And I think containers can be really great because they warm up faster than in-ground beds. And the one mistake I would say that people make with containers is my friend Emily was just here and she has some troughs too at her house. She lives in Oakland and she's like, oh, you plant so much more stuff in here than I do. So you can plant stuff in, like snuggle those plants up, and then just harvest them if they're starting to get crowded. And then utilize trellises to maximize your space. So I put a bunch more trellises in this year, and I'm feeling a little bit like they're a little janky looking because I just used stuff I had in my yard. I'm like, I want them to be covered with plants now so they don't look so wonky. Yeah, utilize the up, and also if you have containers going over the side. So you can plant like a cucumber, for instance, right at the edge of a pot and have it spill over the side.
So going back to your trellis, I think it's really interesting to know of all of the things that can grow up instead of over. So what are some of those things that you're going to grow on your trellis?
Yeah, so squash and cucumbers can grow up trellises, but there's 2 habits of those plants. They have a bush habit and then they have ones that vine. And so a bush habit, it just grows like a bush, a zucchini, and a lot of zucchinis are bush habit. And they take up too much they'll take up your whole container. Everyone's seen a zucchini plant that just,
You only
size of
need
a
one or
kitchen
two.
table, Uh, so you're going to want to look for ones that climb. I know that you and I both love trombetta squash, which is this amazing summer squash zucchini-esque.
Oh,
Yeah, it gets these
oh.
long, like it's very cool. That one grows, like lots of cucumbers climb. So just if you're going to try and grow out of a trellis, double check that if it's a bush or not. And sometimes I just got some cucumbers or some zucchini seeds at a seed exchange that I went to, and it didn't say, so I had to go online and like do a little research, my own research, to see what it was, and they were bush, so I'm gonna try and find a spot for them. But yeah, so cucumbers, squash, melons, any of those cucurbit families, those grow up. Peas and beans. And then you can also grow tomatoes and eggplants up a string. Look it up. It's cool. I've only done it a few times, so I'm still kind of learning myself. But you prune the tomatoes especially a little bit more, so there's a single leader instead of having a bunch of stems. And then you're going to want to do again an indeterminate tomato, not a patio tomato, so one that gets big and tall like a sun gold. And you can squeeze more tomatoes into a small space, and eggplants as well.
Thank you for that. I know people are like taking copious notes here. So, when I go into the nursery to look for seeds, I'm always overwhelmed about what to purchase. And you have some suggestions, and then we're going to go into some really interesting varieties. So, do you want to go ahead and share your screen?
Sure, I will do that. And just bear with me real quick because I have to start the slideshow. So one sec.
No problem.
Okay. So,
And
Jen,
keeping in mind that there's people from all
oh,
over the
yeah.
country and the world with this list. These are Northwest seed companies that are phenomenal.
Yeah, so we both live in the Northwest, and the cool thing about seed companies is that there's seed companies all over the world. Interestingly, a few seed companies own a lot of the seeds, right? The right to like grow those seeds out and sell them. But there's a movement all over the world, in the United States, Europe, Australia, everywhere, to have smaller seed companies that are developing open pollinated seeds. So those are seeds that, if they're not cross pollinated out in your garden and you save the seed, you'll get the exact same plant the next year. And so basically heirlooms are always open pollinated. So there's seed companies all over the world who are preserving heirlooms and then also developing new climate adapted varieties that do better in our changing climate. And so I think wherever you are, if you can look for seed companies that either grow their seeds out in a climate that's similar to yours or are local, you'll have better luck with those seeds. So these are some seed companies that are based in Oregon and Washington. Orange Pippins is a cute company in Portland. She has really pretty seed packets. She buys a lot of her seed actually from some of the other companies on this list, like Wild Garden and Siskiyou. But she has a great, nice collection. And then I'll just point out a few others. Rhythm Seed Farm is a nonprofit that's in Portland, and it's a seed farm. So they are growing seed and saving it in small urban plots, which I think is so cool. I think when you think seed farm, you're like, oh, it's a giant farm out, in the countryside. And actually, people are doing really compelling and important work in cities too. So it's, saving seed isn't just a rural activity. It can be done in a city, which I think is cool. And then Wild Garden Seeds I put on here because the couple that owns that company, they're based down in the Willamette Valley, and they just love to share basically. So they develop seeds. They're part of the Open Seed Source Initiative, which all their seeds means anyone can grow them out as long as they're not trying to patent them. And they have trained tons of other people, including Siskiyou seeds and adaptive seeds. So they're mentors, and they're really basically planting the seeds of other small companies that are out there doing really important work, trying to save and develop new varieties so that there's a lot of biodiversity and help preserve our food supply.
I love that you mentioned the biodiversity. Plant different things in your garden so that the bees and all the little critters have different nutrients in the garden. I mean, I'm trying all different types of things this year to try to pull in different types of pollinators. And this is a really good list to, get a variety of different seeds for tomatoes and peas. And you have a lot of great examples coming up.
Yeah. So I thought I could share just a few interesting varieties that I love and have grown out. Um, this is sugar magnolia. It's a sugar snap pea I grew for the first time last year, and I loved it so much because it has these edible bright purple pods and then kind of chartreuse green seeds, and they're crunchy and sweet, and they have two-toned pink flowers. So when they're growing, before they even put out pods, they sort of look like a sweet pea, but the whole thing is edible. And if you can imagine, like if you put a few of those pea flowers in a salad and bring it to a potluck, or these peas, people are like, whoa, what are these? You know, and they'll just think you're a genius for growing them. So I love stuff like this. Kids and adults alike think this is a really cool variety. And Orange Pippins has it. I also, the seed I grew last year was from Botanical Interests, which is a company based in Colorado.
So,
Um,
so beautiful, isn't it?
I know, right? I was
And that
just
you
like,
can eat all of it. It's
yes,
amazing.
and the greens too. Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole thing. I just like when they grew last year, I was so excited. Um, so this is one of my forever favorites, forel and Schluss lettuce. It's also flashy troutback is sometimes what you'll see it as. It's a romaine type, and it's so pretty. It gets giant. I mean, huge heads that are like bigger than my head. And it's also good as a baby green. You can pull off individual leaves. They're nice for salads. It's great. And what I like about it is it's one of the lettuces that holds a little bit better. When not going to seed when it starts to get hot, or if you have like, you know, I feel like sometimes in the early summer it'll be cool and then you'll have like 3 really hot days and then it's cool again, and that usually makes just all your lettuce go to seed. And this one tends to hold up a little bit better in situations like that.
I think I'll be ordering some of those seeds. That
Yes,
sounds
yes, that's a
fun.
good one. And I would also just say, I mentioned Wild Garden Seeds. They actually specialize in lettuce. They love lettuce. They have a ton of very cool lettuces. So if you're just like, I want to try a new lettuce, go check out the Wild Garden Seeds lettuce section because it's pretty epic. And they have some really cool ones. And they like a lot of these sort of flashy ones where they're speckled.
It looks so good in the garden and in on your salad plate. It's so beautiful.
It really is. So I love Nero di Toscana black kale. This kale gets giant. One time I was at someone's house and it was getting dark and I thought they had their Christmas tree out in their backyard still. It was like early spring, but it was actually just this giant kale that had overwintered. Um,
Wow.
so it gets really long leaves. And I love any of these brassicas. So a brassica is in the cabbage family. Because if you live in a climate where you can get them to go over the winter, in the spring when they flower, they make rob, which is like broccoli rob. It's the unopened flower buds, and they're really delicious. So eat your kale rob if your kale makes it through the winter and produces little broccoli-like clusters. They're so delicious.
And we just put those in the oven and put a little bit of olive oil and salt and pepper, and it's just delicious, like you said.
Yeah, they're so good. Um, and this is purple peacock broccoli. So I like it. It's like a cross between purple sprouting broccoli and a red Russian kale. So you can eat the leaves like kale, and then it also makes a small head, which you can see there. And you cut that out, and then it gets a lot of side shoots. And that's actually a tip I would say if you like broccoli, look for varieties that say they have good side shoot production because I know for a long time I thought I was bad at growing broccoli because I didn't ever get like huge heads like you see at the grocery store. And then I realized that they're not even that great. Like the side shoots are where it's at because the shoots are really tender and delicious. I'm growing Desico this year in my own garden right now. This is something to plant in the fall and over winter in milder climates. And yeah, so side shoot production is something you want to look for.
Good to know. I mean, I've always felt that broccoli was hard to grow because of pests as well.
Yeah, it can be. Exclusion is a good idea with those. So the little, white cabbage moths. I think there's two ways to deal with pests. And one is if you have a small garden, just get a cup of coffee or tea in the morning and go out and just look in your garden every day. And if you notice aphids, smush them. If you see some cabbage caterpillars on there, remove them. And that's kind of how I deal with my pests is just paying close attention. But you can also put a row cover over brassicas tend to be something that's difficult, that will get a pest problem. I have problems with leaf miners in my garden on spinach and chard. And so I'm actually, I hope it's not too late. I'm going to put it over my spinach today because my spinach crop's looking really good and I don't want the leaf miners to come and ruin it. So I love radishes. So I would say there's two vegetables that just taste so much better out of the garden. And it's tomatoes is not one of them. I mean, they do taste really great out of the garden, but I think spinach and radishes taste so much better. They are just so full of water that the moment you harvest them, and then even if you vacuum pack them into a plastic box that's full of some sort of gas to help keep them fresh, they start to dehydrate and they just don't taste as good. And so I think radishes are really fun to grow because they come in different colors and sizes and shapes, and I like to grow them.
And they're quick too, which
Oh
is
yeah, they're quick. Yeah,
it's a quick payoff.
yeah, it's like in 6 weeks or less,
Yeah,
you're harvesting
yeah,
radishes.
love that.
Um, I love to grow eggplants. I think they're fun. I'm a bigger fan of the Asian eggplants because they tend to not be bitter and you can just slice them up, and they grill well. This is one I grew last year and we got like 30 fruit from one plant. It was insane.
Wow,
It's
crazy.
called Ping Tong. I just got it at my local nursery, but it was a really great. They were pretty small or not radishes, eggplants. But they were awesome and really pretty and just so productive, which is not always the case with eggplants. Um, so this is trombetta, the squash we were mentioning. So it grows in this big, sort of loop-de-loop. I think they almost look like birds. And the cool thing about this one is that in the neck, there's no seeds. All the seeds are down in that bulb section. So they're not a seedy squash, and they have tons of flowers. So if you like to put squash blossoms on pizza or stuff them, or use them in pasta, there's or focaccia. I've seen people make really beautiful focaccia with squash blossoms. This is a great one for that, and it climbs trellises, so it's a good space saver too.
They can be 2 to 3 feet long. I mean,
Yeah.
they're fun to watch grow, and kids just like, what is that? And if you have a, big tall trellis, I did find that when I grew them a couple of years ago, that the trellis needs to be really high and also strong because of the weight of the fruit.
Yeah. And I didn't realize this. I just learned this year, and I'm going to try it with a few of the fruit, that in Italy, people grow them out and they harvest them at this stage that you see here. And they also use them, let them, the skin harden and grow them as a winter squash.
Interesting.
So I didn't know that. I'm going to try
Good
it.
to know.
Um, so, uh, so I said herbs are the number one thing to grow. I think the other thing, if you're just getting started with gardening, is a cherry tomato. Like they're dead simple to grow. They're like hard to mess up. You can grow them in a pot, and they ripen quickly and they're super tasty. I love this one called Matt's Wild Cherry. That's what's photoed or is in the photo. But Isis Candy is like a stripy one. A green grape is green, and black cherry is like a pretty big cherry tomato that's a deep red that's almost black. And I will say with tomatoes in general, a lot of the ones that are black have a lot of flavor, a more complex flavor. And orange or yellow tomatoes, or the orange and like red striped ones, tend to be really flavorful. So if you're looking for a super flavorful tomato, look for the black and the orange ones. They tend to be better. Um, this is one I grew last year. It's striped. It's called Langley's Silver Tiger tomato. It was bred on Vashon Island, which is outside Seattle. And I put the photo up because it has these like little gray hairs on it, and it has a really pretty leaf. It was just such an attractive tomato plant, and it was super productive, and the tomatoes were good too. I really, really liked it. It's kind of a hard one to find, but if you can find it, buy
It's so
it.
nice to see all the different colors on your plate as you're serving them, and people are like, "Oh, what's that?" I mean, I didn't know there was a black tomato, and it's really a beautiful way to see the variety that's available and how little we see in the grocery store.
Yeah. I agree. It's fun to make a tomato plate with lots of different colors and shapes and sizes. I just have like I think two more tomatoes here. This is my favorite tomato. It's called Jaune Flamme, and I just love it because it's I think of it, it's like a giant sun gold. So it's not a very big tomato. It's kind of palm sized, but they're super prolific. And they're really just delicious. I love to slow roast them. They get kind of jammy, and they taste good and literally everything. I always grow this plant. And then this is the pepper. It was new to me last year, but I really liked it. It's from Ukraine. It's called Lesa, and they're kind of it's the ones that are on top. There was another pepper in here, but it's the one on the far right, and the two on top are the Lesas, and they're sort of heart shaped, and they were really sweet. It was a super productive plant, and they were so good grilled. I just really, really liked that sweet pepper. And then, did you want to talk about, Joni, about tools for the garden?
Yeah, I do, but just one second. We have one quick question or two
Oh, sure.
questions here. One is you've talked a lot about some growers or some vegetables that are very prolific in the garden. Which are the most finicky?
The most finicky. Corn is really finicky. It's got to be hot. You have to grow kind of a lot of it so that it pollinates. Sometimes you have to hand pollinate it, in order to get them to, in order for the corn cobs to fill out. So corn is pretty finicky. Some of the warm season plants, if you're in a cooler climate, can be finicky. So like like big tomatoes, the sort of beefsteak tomatoes can be hard to get to ripen, and they can be not very productive. So I think sometimes people really like to grow them because they're a challenge. Um, I don't know why I've noticed that a lot of men love to grow heirloom big
Tomatoes.
tomatoes. I don't know what I'm not sure there's like a gender divide on that for some reason. I mean, women do too, of course, but like sometimes people
And the Marie asked about, she goes, I've tried for 3 years to grow carrots and beets from seed. The greens are great, but she hasn't nailed getting the actual fruit.
Okay, so
Any
with
thoughts on that?
carrots, they need to have really loose, well-worked soil, and they because what they do, interestingly, for beets too, all the root vegetables, is they send down the really long root first, so they grow their entire length first, and then they get fatter. And they really need to have consistent soil moisture. So if you let the soil get dry and then it gets really soaked, that can impact the production on the root vegetables. Also, making sure you're thinning them out so they don't feel crowded is important. And I usually just snip them off right at the soil line. And that's especially important with beets because the beet seed is actually a fruit. So it's kind of like, how on a strawberry, there's like more than one seed. Beet seeds are like this little cluster. And so usually when you plant a beet seed, you'll have a few seeds sprout in the same spot. And so you'll need to thin those guys out, or they will just, you won't really get the root to grow.
Okay, let's switch over and talk about what are the best tools to use in the garden.
Oh, so this is my favorite tool, and I think my mom is on. Hi, Mom.
Hi,
And
Mom.
she's the one who introduced me to this tool, and it's such a time saver. It's called a stirrup hoe because it looks like a stirrup on a saddle. And basically, it has an oscillating blade that moves back and forth, and that sharp saddle stirrup part slices right under the soil line. And this is actually not the best picture of it. I just found this online, but it's really great for killing weed seedlings. So about 3 weeks ago, I weeded in my front yard and I put down compost. And now I just noticed yesterday when I was getting my mail that a bunch of little weed seeds have sprouted. So what I'm going to do after this call is go grab my stirrup hoe, and you just break it back and forth on the soil, and it just pulls those little teeny weeds out in a few seconds and they die. And so if you can keep on top of the weeds when they're small in the early spring, just with a stirrup hoe, you basically will just not have a weed problem in the rest of the year. It's great. And if
Well, guess
you're
what? I'm going to go purchase, this weekend.
yeah, and you'll also, you can find a handheld circle hoe, so it has a
Mhm.
circle that's sort of at an angle, and that's good for working in tight spaces and containers. It doesn't oscillate back and forth, but it's the same idea.
Great. Any others?
Um, those are my, oh, I would say actually my other two, my family jokes, they can never find the scissors in our house because I always take them outside and they're like stuck in the garden. But actually, usually, I go to estate sales and I like to buy old dull steak knives because I can just leave them out in the garden and not feel bad about it. And they're great for harvesting, for cutting off tomatoes and peppers and harvesting lettuce. And so just having a few old steak knives just stuck out in your beds is that I use that's probably my like most used garden tool. Random steak
So,
knife I got
yeah.
at an estate sale years ago.
So in order to grow all these beautiful vegetables, we really need to have healthy soil. And, people think of that kind of last. I think they put that as, bottom of the list or don't even think about it. But let's talk about the importance of soil health and some tips that you have to make our soil healthier.
Yeah, so soil health is so important. And I think sometimes people don't realize that soil's alive. So there's tons of fungi and beneficial bacteria, all sorts of there's all sorts of creatures and
So much going on in there.
organisms. The soil food web is what it's called. And it needs to be fed. It needs organic matter. And so organic matter is just anything that was alive that is dead and is, composting basically. So adding compost is super important to your soil. You can mulch and let the mulch stay in place and break down. Cover cropping, even in containers, is so planting something like clover or fava beans are an important cover crop. What those plants do is they actually take nitrogen from the air, and they have a symbiotic relationship with bacteria that live in the soil, and they change the nitrogen from the air, which plants can't access, into a form that they can utilize in conjunction with the rhizobia bacteria in the soil. And then if you leave those roots in the soil, that nitrogen is then available for your plants. So I think that, and then I use a granulated organic fertilizer as well. And last year, my garden didn't thrive very well. And I got soil in my beds, in my troughs, probably like 5 or 6 years ago. And then I'd been adding just sort of bags of potting soil because I didn't need to get a whole delivery. It seemed like a lot. And putting some compost in, I just wasn't paying as close to attention as I normally do in like an in-ground bed. And I think that was detrimental to my garden that last year. So I got some addition. In a container, the plants, they use up the organic matter. So you'll get less soil over the years. So that you do need to replenish it in a container. So I got good soil this year. I dug in deep, probably 12 inches, 3 or 4 inches of compost, and I put organic fertilizer in. And the plants that I do have out I can already see a huge difference. So yeah.
Fantastic. Do you have any other organic tips? You mean from all of your experience in organic gardening and in your own garden? Do you have other tips you'd like to share?
I think another tip is watering at the base of plants can really help prevent disease. So especially with fungus, if a spore gets onto a leaf, it needs that leaf to stay wet for a certain amount of time in order for it to take hold on the plant. And so watering at the base or watering in the morning so that the plants dry out, I think really does help reduce disease pressure. And then, people often ask me about rotating crops in a small garden. And that's tough, frankly. Like I have a small garden and I don't always rotate my crops because I only have so many places to go. So if you have a big garden, yes, plant your groups of plants together. You plant your cucurbits together and your pepper and tomato plants together and eggplants. Those are all, they're in 2 plant families, and then move them to different beds every year if you can. But if you can't in your small garden, just do your best and notice if you have a disease problem one year, you get a blight on your tomatoes or something, that's next year, you're not going to want to grow tomatoes in that soil. You're going to want to put something else there. But otherwise, if you didn't have any pest problems and it's a small garden, I'd say, and that's the best place for your tomatoes, grow them there again.
And how much effort do you put into companion planting?
I I don't put a ton of effort into companion planting. What I try to do is have mix in plants that draw in pollinators in all of my beds. And the way I usually do that is by planting herbs, especially chervil and cilantro and parsley. Those all three have flowers that are really attractive to pollinators. And I also plant sunflowers and zinnias and other plants that have a lot of pollen in with my flowers. And I let some of my vegetables flower too. So carrots, all of the brassicas, all those you'll just see tons, especially of the little tiny insecticidal wasps.
Yeah.
Um, they love those. And so yeah, so just letting stuff go to flower is important for drawing in pollinators.
So before we go to some of your recipes, we had a couple of questions from the audience. And one was, what are your best tips for growing potatoes?
For growing potatoes. So I like to sprout them. So they're just starting to, get their sprouts. And then potatoes, they like loose soil. And I think sometimes people plant potatoes a little too close so that you want them to be able to, the tubers, the rhizomes to spread out. And then having consistent soil moisture is super important with potatoes. And then as they grow, basically, they'll continue to get more rhizomes if you hill them up around the plants. That's what hilling up is you're as the plant grows, you're gradually putting soil up around it. So don't just like let it sprout and get super tall. You will only have potatoes way down at the bottom that are in the soil. And you can hill them up with soil or mulch. I actually think they do pretty good in containers, in even those big felt containers. And what you do is you plant them at the bottom. You don't fill the whole container up with soil. You plant them, and then as they grow, you put more soil in, and then you can actually just
Yeah,
dump them out at the end, which is kind of nice.
that's
If you
fun.
want new potatoes, usually when they start to flower, that's when there's new potatoes down on the you can just kind of stick your hand in there and feel around and pull off some new potatoes, which are so good.
So yummy. So someone asked, what are the best vegetables to grow in a harsh environment with limited water?
So the best vegetables to grow in a harsh environment with limited water. So I would say that there's a lot of people have good luck, with dryland farming with tomatoes and some of the plants that like hotter conditions. So there's actually what I would do is I would go, there is a nonprofit, it's called Native Seeds and then Search, SEARCH, all capitals. They're based in the Southwest. I think they're in Tucson, and they have been saving indigenous plants that were grown for centuries in the American Southwest and Mexico. So there's a lot of beans, squash, corn, that are very old varieties that are designed to grow in harsher climates that are hot. And so if you live in that climate, I would definitely look to Native Seed Search as a resource because they have a lot of information and great variety choice.
Fabulous. Okay, Willie, we would love to see some of your recipes. So will you share your screen again?
Oh, yes, I forgot that it was on there. Sorry.
Because as I
Um,
mentioned in the beginning of the book, so each section, so you go through, here's some mint, and then you have some recipes in here, mustard greens, radicchio, then you have some recipes. I mean, it's just so fun. Like this one, it's making me hungry, actually. Spinach risotto, she has Swiss
that
chard.
was really good.
Here
I
you
just
have radish greens. In fact, I was going to ask you specifically about radish greens, and there it is.
so this is one of the recipes from the book. And, as I mentioned at the beginning, I talk about all the different stages of harvest and the different types of things you can harvest off each plant. And so what I didn't want to say is, hey, eat your radish greens, period, and then give no follow-up on that because If you've never cooked with radish greens before, you might just try and eat them raw, and they're not very good raw. They're kind of furry and they
They are
don't have a
furry.
great mouthfeel. But that all disappears when you cook them. They're full of iron and calcium. They're super nutritious and they're delicious wilted. And so this recipe uses the roots in the cheese, in the tartine, which is just like a fancy way to say, grilled cheese. Basically, it's an open, you broil cheese and butter with radishes in it, and then you top it with the wilted radish greens. And you can also put in other greens as well. If you don't have enough radish greens, you could put spinach or turnip greens or whatever type of green, arugula, in and melt it on top. And it's nice because you can make the buttery cheese mixture and then just spread it on the toast and broil it and wilt some greens. So it's a really quick and easy recipe. You can also, if you wanted to bring kind of a fun appetizer to a potluck or to a party, you could use a baguette and make little baguette slices instead. So it makes a great appetizer too.
Great. I'm excited to do that. What else do you have?
This is the only one I
Oh,
brought.
that was the only one. Well, you'll
Yeah.
have to grab the book and
Yeah.
get all of these amazing recipes. So here's one with English peas and garlic scape pesto. I'm just telling you, that's why I love this book so much, is that now I can just come back here for all of my questions and recipe ideas. So Willi, it's an amazing book, and you have another one coming out in the not too distant future. Tell us about that.
We do. It's available for pre-order now if you want to look for it. So it's called Veggies for Breakfast. And the idea behind this book was I have right outside my kitchen door a big vegetable garden. And I found myself just eating like toast and an egg every day for breakfast. And I was like, wait a minute. It's hard to get all your vegetables every day if you skip an entire meal. Why am I not eating vegetables? And it turns out if you're going to eat vegetables for breakfast, other than in the smoothie, you need a little bit of planning because most of the time in the morning you don't have a ton of time to chop vegetables. And so I came up with a bunch of recipes that have a lot of things you can make ahead and techniques for getting the veggies ready so that it's feasible to eat veggies for breakfast. And so
It's my
and so
favorite.
it's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of people on this call are probably like, yay, veggies for breakfast, like breakfast salad sounds good, right? And then there's like a whole other part of the world, like my husband and my child, who are like, breakfast? Where are the pancakes? So
Vegetable eaters unite for
yeah.
breakfast.
So there is a sweet section that has kind of sneaky veggies in it for more skeptical veggie eaters in the morning. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I think there's a lot of recipes in there. Some of my favorites are a savory oatmeals. So you make a savory oatmeal and you top it with vegetables, and yeah. So that's coming out
Oh,
November
I can't
4th.
wait. And when is that coming out?
It comes out November 4th. You can pre-order now. And if you've ever wondered about that, you see people, you're like, why does it say pre-order now? And that's because if one person buys a pre-order on Amazon, then Amazon orders 2 to 3 more copies for every pre-order. And so if you have people out there you want to support because you like their work and they're saying, pre-order my book, it's definitely will help them.
Really, thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of us, I didn't know that, and I'm sure that that will encourage a lot of people to go in and pre-order. So is that the best place to buy is on Amazon to pre-order, or is there another place as well?
You can pre-order on Amazon, or of course, if you have a favorite local bookshop, you can just go into the bookshop and say, hey, Veggies for Breakfast is a book coming out by Willi Galloway in November. I'd like to pre-order it, and they can pre-order it for you too.
Okay. Always support our local bookstores. I can't say that enough.
And
Willi,
how
it is such a joy to have you on Rebel 11 again. I just love what you're doing, what you stand for. Here's her book again. grow, cook, eat. And I can't wait to have you on to talk about breakfast and veggies, which is
Yeah, I love that.
amazing. And for all of you, thank you for joining us today. I bet you learned a lot like I did. And here's to a vivacious growing season with tons of bounty and friends around the table eating fresh vegetables from your garden. And we would love to have you join us on other Revel 11 events, both in person, online, and then for our global retreats around the world. We're going to Turkey and Portugal. So check us out on revel11.com. We thank you so much for being here. Happy growing, as someone just said. Thanks, Arlene.
Thank you.
Willie, thank you so much. It's so great to have you here and can't wait to see you very soon again in person.
Yeah, I had so much fun and I'm excited there were people all over the world. Hello to everyone from beautiful sunny Portland, Oregon, which I don't always get to say, but it is sunny today. And I just wanted to say I am on Instagram a little bit. I'm trying to be better about it. Willi Galloway is my Instagram. And then I'm working really hard right now on starting a newsletter on Substack. It's called The Garden Dish. And it's going to have tours of other people's gardens and my garden and recipes. So if you go to willigalloway.com, you can sign up there, and I'm going to be launching that this summer.
That's fantastic. Well, much success to you, Willie, and everyone have a great day and see you soon.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.